light of the Boston bombing, there are questions being raised about why former terrorists from the Weather Underground are being allowed to teach at America's most prestigious universities across the country. Now, first, there is Kathy Bowden, who now holds an adjunct professorship at New York's Ivy League institution called Columbia University. You may recall she spent 22 years in prison for her role in an armed robbery that killed 2 police officers and a Brinks guard. And we can't forget the domestic terror group's co-founder, Bill Ayers. He's now a visiting scholar at Minnesota State University and is a retired professor from the University of Illinois at Chicago. Now, keep in mind, this is a man who has refused to apologize for his role in bombings across the U.S. Are these really people that we want indoctrinating, teaching our children? Here with reaction, Fox News contributor Michelle Malkin, Fox News political analyst Juan Williams. Juan, all right, let's project out 22 years from today. And Jahar Zanarev, the younger brother, the bomber that lived in the Boston Marathon bombings, could you imagine a scenario, any scenario, he's involved in a bombing that kills 4 people, including an 8-year-old and a police officer, people that lose their legs and limbs, etc. Could you ever imagine a scenario in which he becomes let's say, a professor at Harvard University teaching kids? Could you ever imagine that?
No.
So then how does Kathy Bowden, involved in killing 2 police officers and an armed guard, how does she get to teach at Columbia? How does Bill Ayers get to teach?
I guess you're doing a rhetorical thing, but look, she's been convicted, right? She was convicted, she served her time, she's been paroled.
Right.
Okay,
and this is the best Columbia University can offer its students a convicted terrorist, domestic terrorist cop killer. That's who.
I didn't know that you're now an expert on faculty hiring at Columbia, but I guess Lee Bollinger, who's the president of Columbia.
I'm thinking we might have better people than convicted domestic terrorist cop killers. I think we could find better.
In terms of that, I think it's reprehensible what she did. I think she's a terrorist, from you want my point of view. But here's the other thing. I think that, are you saying that everybody who's been convicted in America should be jobless and left on the street?
I'm saying that this would be the same, Michelle, as Jahar. 22 years from now, he gets all these degrees while he's on our dime, while he's in prison, then goes out and teaches at Harvard. I don't get it. Is this the best we can offer our kids?
Well, what I don't get is just how glib Juan Williams is being about this. It's not just rhetorical. The fact is that institutions of higher learning in America, particularly the most prestigious Ivy League schools, whether it's Columbia or Yale or Northwestern, and I name those specifically because those all have been sanctuaries and havens for Weather Underground terrorists who remain unrepentant to this day. And Juan just seems to be playing it off as a joke, as if we think this is funny. I mean, you have kids, Juan. You have seen some of them go through higher education, and fortunately, I suppose, your kids have not been exposed to this kind of poisonous apologism for violent domestic terrorism, but it's real, and it is an entrenched problem when you have all of these taxpayer-funded, tenured radicals who still hate America to this day and are perhaps indoctrinating the next generation of people who will commit violent acts in this country. It is not a joke.
I don't know that she's doing that, but Michelle, maybe you do. But what I do know is that, in fact, when you say she has no remorse, that she's the same person she was 30 years ago.
She doesn't have remorse.
Well, she wrote an article.
Have you followed her case? Have you followed her case, Juan? I may not be a real journalist, but I started writing about this case in 2002 and 2003, and there are families who lost loved ones who were defending the front lines, protecting and serving, and this woman essentially is laughing in their faces by continuing to have this prestigious position.
Here's what I know, Michelle, so you can comment on this. What I've read is that she wrote an essay in 2004 for the Fellowship for Reconciliation newsletter. It said she is filled with remorse. She literally used the words, "I am sorry." She also said she's met one of the people who was left fatherless by the crime she committed, by the murder she was involved with, and that they are involved in the same effort,
domestic terror.
And what I know is that
this is not a case of someone without remorse.
Yeah, at her parole hearing, she invoked every left-wing canard. She blamed white guilt for what she did in murdering and helping murdering in cold blood Waverly Brown, Edward O'Grady, and Peter Page. And those families, maybe there was one remote relative who might have accepted that apology, but there are still people living today. And it's not just that particular case. Remember, before she was arrested in that case, she was a fugitive involved in the bombing at a townhouse in New York that still had remained unsolved. And she ran from justice. Some repentance there.
Let me remind everybody of the Weather Underground's incidents of violence, and we'll put it up on the screen. And I also want to remind everybody that it was of all days September 11th, the morning of September 11th, 2001, in the New York Times, there's Bill Ayers being quoted as saying, and I'm paraphrasing, "I don't regret setting bombs, that he wished he had done more."
Stomping on the American flag.
Yeah.
You know,
literally.
I'm a little shocked too, Juan. I mean, this is the best our Ivy League institutions can offer American children. Pretty much unrepentant, domestic terrorist, cop killer. Really? That's what you said your kid works really hard to get into an Ivy League college, and then this is what they get as a professor? That doesn't outrage you? A convicted murderer of cops? What's the difference? Why don't we go see Jahar? Let Jahar teach in 22 years. That wouldn't bother you?
It is indefensible.
It would be indefensible.
I don't want anything to do with the Weather Underground and their terrorism and left-wing terrorism, right-wing terrorism.
How about speaking out against this woman teaching children at an Ivy League institution?
I disagree with the two of you. This woman has served her time. Somebody convicted her of a crime, and now you have Columbia University saying, yes, she has the skills, the knowledge, and adds something to our university.
Yeah, we only hire the best at Ivy League schools.
They're not doing this with taxpayer dollars. That's their decision. If you want to judge them negatively, go ahead.
That's the best America has to offer. Michelle, last word.
Bill Ayers in Venezuela. Education, he said, is the motor force of revolution. And now so many of he and his Weather Underground, SDS, and BLA colleagues, Rashid Khalidi, Susan Rosenberg, they have all been exalted in the ivory tower. Parents, beware.
Well said.
Do not spend your money on these people. Do not.
Good to see you both. Thank you.
Take care.